Hey, it's Jeremy. Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, self publisher, and I share my creative process here live online. If you would like to support this channel, if you would like to get access to bonus videos and additional behind the scenes blog posts, artwork, and get a closer look at my creative process, you can go to patreon.com/GERIMI. For as little as $2 a month, you can get bonus blog posts and all the rest. Do an additional bonus live stream once a month. And I will also start sharing some of my existing comics as webcomics on there. If you would like to see some of the comic books that I have published, including the current project I'm working on, Morningstar, which is Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western, you can go to comics.jeremy.net. There are PDFs of my comics. You can PDF previews you can download for free. And if you would like to purchase some of my comics, either physical copies or if you read digitally, they're available on Amazon Kindle. You can go to amazon.jeremy.net, and that will forward you to my Amazon author page. So let's get started. You are falling into my comics or my creative process at a very awkward stage. So I'm going to lay out my boards here. So I am in the middle of thumbnailing the final issue of Morningstar. And I'm at a very particularly messy stage. I see some comments in the chat. I see Aaron there. Hey, how you doing, Aaron? Thanks for showing up. This stage I'm at, the gritty. Amaris is in the chat. Hey, Amaris, glad you could make it. It feels good to start getting back into a regular schedule because I've been doing a variety of pieces of artwork over the past few weeks. Some original artworks that I was doing to sell at Amazing Las Vegas Comic Con. In addition, just packing and prepping for the convention. So I almost feel like I have not been doing thumbnails for a month. I think I did do some. I can't remember if I did a little bit last week, but point being is that when you take a little bit of time off from any project or any creative practice, whether it's writing daily, drawing daily, studying anatomy, whatever, you feel like you've lost a step. It takes a while to pick up speed. And I am in a very ugly stage in my creative process where I almost feel like I'm starting from zero. I know that I will pick up speed again as I continue drawing, but I happen to be thumbnailing a particularly difficult sequence. I also happen to be, it's hard to put words on it, but it really comes down to I'm doing sort of a challenging, no, not challenging. I'm doing what I normally do, which is sort of a pincer maneuver. I start with where I plan for a scene to begin, where I plan for a scene to end, and then I create the connective tissue in the middle. The problem here is that I'm storyboarding a sequence. Basically, Michael, the Archangel Michael in my comic, has been shot, thrown off a cliff. Lucifer tried to kill him. We're now at the point where Lucifer is invading heaven. Michael was brought back and is now on his way to try and save or help fight off Lucifer's invasion. And he's intercepted by Uriel, the angel of death, who is under Lucifer's influence. Now, I'm not going to go through and recap everything that led to this sequence because I did that. I posted a Patreon exclusive live stream yesterday, and it took me 20 minutes just of talking to explain where I'm at in the story. And I don't want to just spend 20 minutes talking and recapping the same thing I recapped yesterday. So I'm just going to dive in, tell you where I'm at, and go from there. But the point being, the reason why I'm a little bit distracted in discussing this is because this is the ugly stage of comic book creation. The ugly stage because I like to show not just when things are working well and coming along easily, but when they're actually challenging and difficult. I see some more folks showing up in the chat. I see Ass Luber. That is a crazy handle, man. Thanks for showing up. Stuff like that cracks me up. All right. So it's one thing to know what you're doing, just do the hard work. It is another thing when you're just sort of pushing pieces together, trying to figure out how to get to where you need. So in this scene, what I need to have happen is I want the page to end with basically this image that I sketched out. And it's Uriel kind of choking Michael, but at the same time, Michael is much more powerful than he's been in the past. So you're not really sure. I've kind of tried to describe Uriel, the Angel of Death, as kind of like the Hulk of this team. He's very quiet, but he's super strong, super powerful, and Michael's going toe to toe with him. But now that Michael's kind of supercharged, you're not really sure who's going to win this fight. I see Ion Rocks is there in the chat. So people are asking why would say my name? Are you saying why would I say your name? I just usually try to give people a shout out when I see their comments in the chat. I see Aaron say my name. Yeah, I usually just try to mention who's commenting in the chat for people that are watching, because otherwise I'm just having a random conversation with disembodied voices, and people who are watching this in the replay who aren't live in the chat are like, what the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to? So I usually just mention people by their first name as I'm going. And if you don't want me mentioning your comments and you just want them in the chat, you can, I don't know. I'm not sure how to handle that. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. I don't know. Maybe you could put an asterisk before the comment or something, and then I'll remember not to read it out loud, or something. I don't know. We'll figure out something. I'm always open to changing things as I go. To adapt to you guys, since I'm here for you. But anyway, how about I just call you Luber for short? But anyway, it says the story sounds good. Thanks, man. All right. So, what happened on the previously on this page? I know I said I wasn't really going to do a recap, but Uriel basically swoops out of the sky and knocks Lucifer to the ground, and now I'm just figuring out how I want this little sequence that ends with them in kind of a hand-to-hand struggle, how I want that to feel. And I started with sort of sketching out little ideas, like maybe it comes down to who do I want to have the upper hand after they hit the ground. And I thought about the idea, there's two options. There's the option of, and there's just two guys. There's Uriel and Michael fighting. So do I want Michael to have the upper hand and then Uriel to kind of fight back? Or do I want to have Uriel have the upper hand and have Michael fight back? Right now I'm starting with Michael's face pushed into the ground. And again, with these thumbnails, maybe I don't know if I should bring this closer to the camera, because then I'll be going up and down and up and down. But also with these thumbnails, it's really hard to see what I'm doing, because they're small, tiny scribbles that are really meant just for me to work out the space for what's going to be happening. But and the other thing that, again, I repeated, or that I previously mentioned in the Patreon exclusive live stream, was that Uriel is operating under the assumption that Michael murdered another archangel, Raphael, who is Uriel's brother-in-law, but also is sort of a counterbalance. Raphael is a healer, whereas Uriel is a killer. And now that balance has been disrupted, Uriel is very angry. He feels like part of himself has been destroyed. It's his closest friend. So he's very angry at Michael. Meanwhile, Michael was actually present when Lucifer killed Raphael. So surprise, surprise, Lucifer lied. And the real question is, how do I want to carry that emotional beat of Raphael of Uriel believing one thing that is not the truth, and Michael having to stop this very powerful archangel with who he really does not want to kill. So I'm just trying to figure out here. A lot of this really is me talking out loud while I'm thinking. So you will have to excuse this entire stream is going to be a lot more distracted than usual, and it's going to sound a lot more random because this is the part when I talk about this being sort of the ugly part of the comics creation, is the part where I don't have all the answers off the top of my head, and usually I kind of sit and think and sketch until I get something that pieces together what I want. And this is the phase that doing this live in front of people is a lot more challenging than me just inking a page. Because when I'm inking a page, I can hold conversations while I draw. As you can see, I'm drawing right now, but I'm really just drawing more of what I've already drawn before. And so drawing while talking is one thing, but drawing while thinking is very different. It's a lot more difficult for me. But to be honest, I just wanted to do it because I feel like sharing the ugly part of the creative process is the thing that I'm most interested in. I don't want people to, I'm honestly not here to show off. It's like, look at how awesome I am at making comics. I feel like showing the phases where it's difficult, where it's challenging, where things aren't coming out well, where you end up taking a scene pretty far and you think you have it all figured out, and then you get to the end and you're like, oh wait, this doesn't work because I forgot one thing and now I have to completely relay out these panels or get rid of this. Showing those phases of the creative process I think is important because making comics can be very intimidating and very discouraging. And I think showing that it's not like somebody just has a natural talent for storytelling and everything they do is awesome, and if you don't have that, you can't do it. No, that's not true. I think what is more important is to show that even the best creative storyteller, which I am not, but even someone who is great at it, usually hits points where they have to sit down and work through things. You have to roll up your sleeves and say, all right, let me try this. No, that didn't work. Let me try this. No, that didn't work. Let me try this. And I think showing someone in that struggle and working through that struggle and what it feels like to come out the other side with an answer that wasn't easy, an answer that was hard fought for. I think that's encouraging. So I guess if I imagine these two characters kind of fell out of the sky, which that's sort of what this little thumbnail up here represents. Like Uriel just kind of flew down out of the sky and punched him out of the air because they're angels. They were flying. So they hit the ground, and I guess if I were going to do Uriel being on the weak part of this conflict, like them coming out and Michael actually being in control, I would start maybe with Michael having him in a chokehold. I see more people in the chat. I see Art with Osir in the chat. Thanks for showing up, man. Afternoon. And I can't remember if it was Osir or whether it was Aaron who had mentioned me making my channel available for super chats. But it should be super chat available, So if you feel like dropping a little tip for the channel, please feel free to. If you try to and it doesn't work, let me know, because then I can look into why the super chat isn't working. But it should be available now. So I think I had mentioned, all right, what was I saying? Like I said, this is going to be a real messy thing because I'm thinking and drawing at the same time. But I'm imagining see. I'm not going to use that little hand there. I'm imagining Uriel in a chokehold, getting choked out by Michael. So let's say got Michael's forearm. And a lot of times I will literally just make boxes until I figure out where I want these physical elements to be. And this is a place where normally I would start drawing this, and because I have my my tablet in front of me for to read the chat, I'm not able to pull up what I would normally do, which is pull up reference. Actually, you know what? If I need to read the chat while I'm doing this, I can look back up at my phone, which I'm using to actually stream this live stream from. I'm gonna go ahead and look up a couple of quick pictures of chokeholds. This is a thing that you would normally say, all right, I might save this stage in terms of look up reference. I might save this stage usually for when I'm doing my actual layouts. So that all I care about is the composition of the actual page, the event that's happening. But sometimes seeing what the pose is going to be helps me figure out the storytelling beat. And sometimes it's just images, sometimes it doesn't. But let me just type in chokehold here. I know watching me look up reference is not exciting, especially when you can't even see the screen I'm looking at. But I kind of wanted to show you what I would be doing when I'm trying to figure out my thumbnails. And one of the things I would do is I would say, well, what do different chokeholds look like? Now, this is one of those things where having someone who has studied martial arts is extremely advantaged when it comes to drawing hand-to-hand combat, because you've got to, like, let's say that you're somebody who practiced Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I've taken a couple of jiu-jitsu classes, just with a friend of mine who's a jiu-jitsu aficionado. He studied it for several years, used to compete in tournaments. I was just looking for a new way to work out, so I went to a couple of classes, and it was one of the toughest workouts I've ever had in my life. And I think I was like in maybe my late 20s, early 30s when I did this, and there were like 18-year-old kids who weren't even like that bigger. They were like probably smaller than me, but they were just whooping my ass in the sparring part of the class, because they've trained. Training beats everything. I mean, somebody who is well trained can obviously defeat somebody who's a lot bigger, or a lot has more physical advantages. But this is one of those things where haven't taken any, didn't take enough jujitsu classes to really get into the martial arts of it. But that's an advantage when it comes to, I think, drawing comics or drawing any type of artwork where people are having physical combat. I see comments in the chat. Art with us here says Undertaker, Superman, or any old school wrestling pics would help. Hulk likes to use chokeholds, and Iron Rox's training overcomes everything. So for me, it's really more the fact that I want to see where I'm going to place, obviously placing the characters' heads right next to each other. But I think I wanted to get a sense of, really, I just want to get a sense of where I'm going to have the arms placed. So let's see. And I think the challenge here, the other additional challenge, is the fact that he's trying to choke out somebody who, his head is normal sized. But the way I have depicted Uriel in this comic is that he's over 7 feet tall in comparison to most other people. So again, the comments that people had about the Undertaker or the Hulk in terms of combat, in terms of like using them for reference, is pretty accurate, because this guy's size, we have two people of, Michael is over 6 feet tall, so he would already be pretty physically impressive fighting most people. But the fact that he's fighting someone who is so big that he makes Michael look and feel small, it's trying to convey action, scale, and emotional drama all at once. Because we have this conflict is Michael, they're both under both these characters, the conflict, the dramatic conflict, comes from the fact that both these characters believe something different. Michael believes that Uriel, well, Michael does believe something that is true, which is that Uriel is under the control of Lucifer, and he's doing his bidding as Lucifer plans his rebellion and takeover of heaven. But what Michael believes is that Uriel is operating even though Lucifer has murdered. I mean, they all kind of refer to each other as brothers and sisters, but this character who really is like Uriel's brother, that Lucifer has murdered this guy. Michael has watched that happen. He's like, how evil are you that you just can roll with this? So Michael is operating under a sense of betrayal in one sense. It's not even like, how could you betray me, but how could you betray your brother who was murdered? And Uriel is operating under the dramatic belief that Michael is the one who has murdered this brother, because Uriel wasn't there and Michael was. So that's sort of the dramatic conflict of this. And I already know how this conflict gets resolved. Hang on, I'm switching back because I realize I don't really necessarily need to keep looking at this reference, or at least I can come back to it if I need to. Let me go back to the chat, because it's really easy while I'm drawing, particularly, let me just say, when I'm drawing in general, it's easy for me to just get caught up in what I'm doing and not pay attention to the chat. But when I'm drawing and I'm talking through this, then it's almost like I'll fall into a little bit of a rabbit hole. So unfortunately, my Spanish is horrible. So Luber has some comments that are in Spanish that I can't quite pronounce. So I apologize for that. But I would just butcher the language if I were to try. I only know enough Spanish to... Oh, it's Italian. Apologies. Well, I know even less. I've been to Florence twice, and Italy is beautiful. I've been to one trip. I went just to Florence, and another trip I went to. We took one of those tours where they take you around to a bunch of different countries. We went to Florence, Venice, Rome, and Sorrento. It's beautiful. It's one of the places my wife keeps bringing up if we were to ever leave the U.S. Like, Italy is one of the places we would want to come to. But literally, I only learned just enough of the language to be able to order food and say please and thank you. But let's see here. What else we have? Oh. Arthur says, I tend to block it out using stick figures if necessary. I presume we're talking about like action sequences, drawing the characters getting choked, then draw the characters doing the choking, drawing through it the whole time. So, in terms of drawing transparent figures, drawing the see-through, so you can work out all the elements. I'm adding that part, the end about drawing, just explaining what drawing through is for those who aren't familiar. But yeah, drawing everything as though it was, for those who aren't familiar, instead of just drawing an arm, to draw sort of the primitive shape. Like, let's say if this was a see-through sphere that makes the shoulder, and then the upper arm being a transparent cylinder, and then the forearm. Drawing through is just drawing the whole thing like it's made out of, say, clear plastic or glass, so you can sort of see where all the parts line up and how the kind of shapes they make. So that's a very crude draw through in ink. But it's a very handy tool that animators use often, because animators need to understand how all the parts are interacting with them, because they're not just drawing figures, but they're not just drawing figures and forms, but they're drawing things interacting with each other. And they need to really understand how objects occupy space so they can convincingly animate them. Let's see here. And I see Iron Rock says touring is fun. Luber says nice, but I am native Italian. Let's see. Osir says next week I'm on vacation and plan to try to write 3 to 4 more of the 15 issues I plan to write this year. You know what? Go on with your bad self. 15 issues in a year? That is ambitious. I hope that that vacation is incredibly productive. That you're able to get a lot done. I know that sometimes it seems insane to people that artists and writers would be spending their vacations doing more work. But sometimes, I mean, when you really love being creative, it's sort of like that is the, a vacation is having the luxury to focus just on making things, because so much of the time in our life is spent doing things that might be necessary for us to be creative but aren't the creative process in itself. So yeah, for me, I definitely can see that being a great vacation, just having the freedom to focus on nothing but a simple part of the creative process, whether it be writing, drawing, thumbnailing. Like, yeah, that sounds like a great vacation to me. I hope you have a great time. Let's see here. So I'm just changing the angle here and I'm testing out thumbnailing. So almost like a mirror of what this original picture is. And, I almost feel like for you guys' sake, watching the live stream, I should almost clarify what this mush is. What this mush up here is, what it's depicting is one character whose face is pushed into the ground, that character being Michael. This is a profile of the character's body. The other character, Uriel, having his arm resting on Michael's face, his fingers kind of coming over his face, and he's pushing downward, pushing the character into the ground. And I'm still leaning so far. I'm leaning towards this being the dramatic action, the physical action, and then having Michael sort of fighting him off, and then getting them, basically struggling to get them to this position where they're up in the air with Uriel holding him up and them kind of grappling. Just because this looks visually dramatic. But part of my approach to thumbnailing is I like to just sketch out other variations of a physical action or a scene, just because I want to see what happens if I look at doing it a different way. Maybe it'll be a waste of time, but maybe I'll discover something that's different than options 1 or 2. That was even better. So let's see here. Art from Osir says, I have switched modes to focus on writing, and then I will start thumbnailing the issues late this year or next year. And it's funny. I feel like there was a point where the thumbnailing phase felt like it should go super quick. Like, it would actually be the fastest phase in the process. Like, it would only take me maybe a couple of days to thumbnail a whole issue. Now, I spend forever thumbnailing. I may spend a month, 2 months thumbnailing, working out every angle until I have it exactly the way I want. And then each other phase, the layouts take a little bit less time, then the actual inking takes a little bit less time. But it's like I try to do a lot of the heavy lifting at this early stage and exploring that, only because I have found that in the end, when I'm inking a page, if I start deciding, oh, this scene isn't working, or I don't like this angle, or I need to rework it, anytime, the farther on in the stage that I have to rework things, the longer it takes. Because if I decide that I want to change things in the layout stage, in my pencils, I just need to go back and make new thumbnails of those changes. If I decide in the inking stage that I want to make changes, I have to go back and do new thumbnails, and then sometimes do a new layout drawing just for that section. So either way, I'm going back and doing thumbnails later. So I'd rather explore all the options in the thumbnail stage and be really happy with it going forward. So I find that I do a little bit of extra work in the thumbnail stage to push myself all the way down, in terms of, to push so that everything in the later stages, I'm much more certain about what I want. Luber says, I kill drawings. Um, kills. I'm not sure exactly what this is. It says, it's supposed to say I'm not a native Italian. Sorry. Um, let's see here. Osir says I have one done during my last vacation in March. It took 3 days to do, which was about 4 to 6 hours. With I 4 to 6 hours with I look to spend doing that besides streaming. Um, I'm not sure how many hours I actually spend thumbnailing, but I usually only get one, if I'm lucky, 2 hours a day to do creative work. So I would say to thumbnail an entire issue, it would generally take me, well, let's say it takes me a month to do it. That probably ends up being about, wow, I really spend 30 hours thumbnailing? It's crazy. But my issues tend to be 24 pages each. Art with Osir says, how far have you done with the plotting out of this book? Well, the plot is completely worked out. In fact, some of my more recent videos, when I was showing myself doing what I call the keyframe thumbnails, which is where I just do one thumbnail to represent the entire page, that's why I worked out that this issue is going to be 40 pages instead of 24 like my normal ones, because it's not quite enough material to break it into 2 issues. I mean, I could do that, but then they would be shorter than my normal issues. But there was nothing that I was willing to cut. So I just said, I'm going to do an extra long final issue to really make it sort of a grand finale. But yeah, the entire thing is plotted out structurally. I know what's going to happen in every beat of this issue. So, and Osir says, that is the method I like because I don't want to rework later when it comes to comics or any artwork. I presume we're talking about working out all the details in the thumbnail stage. All right, let me keep drawing because I'm getting a little bit too chatty chat here. So what I'm sketching out here now is the alternative of Michael choking out Uriel. And to be honest, I'm being a little bit too precious about all of this, and I really should just get on with, well, what happens after he's choking him? Well, in each of these scenarios, the other character turns the table. So I guess, and this is what's crazy, and when I started talking in the beginning about this whole process being messy, what I'm doing is basically I'm sketching out the parallel options of both of these. So I'm saying, all right, if Michael's the one who's on the ground, what comes next? And then going back and forth between Michael's alternative versus Uriel being the one on the ground. And just working through these two parallel sequences. And really, it's like the way I've thumbnailed this out, I've got one panel where they impact 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 6th panel with them grappling. So it's just 4 panels to get through them both fighting and realizing the truth of their scenario, the fact that Lucifer has lied. And I guess what I had planned and the way I'd written this was that Uriel does not believe Michael when Michael tells him that Lucifer is the one responsible for Raphael's death. This other character who died in the previous issue. And at that point, Michael has to make a decision. In a way, I know that a lot of people were very critical of the Superman movie Man of Steel, but I'm kind of putting Michael in that situation, that Superman situation where Zod says, well, I'm just going to keep killing people unless either you kill me or I kill you, but I'm not stopping. And basically, Michael is going to be in that situation where he has to decide, what do I want to do? And this scene, spoilers, I mean, you're watching me draw the thumbnails of the comics. But yeah, spoilers, decision gets taken out of Michael's hands. Let's see here. More in the chat. Art with Osier says, how many panels are on your pages? I did 7 to 10 for my first comic and decided to go with 5 for the next. What is your happy range? My happy range tends to be about 4 to 6. That's probably my average. And the way that I tend to lay out my pages is, and I've said this more than once. In fact, I think it was either 2 weeks ago, my live stream was named 9-panel grid as a compositional device. But what I do for most pages is I start out with a simple page, and I will divide this page into a 9-panel grid. Now, this is before I've really decided, unless it's a splash page, this is before I've decided how many panels a particular page may be. And then when I get in here, I figure out, well, how many beats do I need? What panel do I want to be the big panel? I may decide that in this 9-panel grid, I may make the middle tier one large panel. I may make these upper tiers, this top tier, I may make it 3 panels. So I may go like 1, 2, 3, then one large 4. And then I may come down to the bottom and I may divide this into half and go 5, 6. But what I do, the reason why I do it this way is because I try to treat the page, the whole page, as what's the beginning, middle, and end. And I figure out, all right, the top tier tends to be the beginning. Well, it makes sense. Beginning, middle, end. But then within that, I may look at this tier and say, well, this middle may make sense to be one large panel, so I'll keep it that way. The end action, in order for it to make sense or for it to set up what happens on the following page, I may decide to break this into 2 panels of action. And then this top tier, I may break this up. But the idea is that this could switch for any one of these. The large panel could be at the top if I want to do an establishing shot, or if there's a lot of action, I may take, or if it's even if it's not an establishing shot, let's say I want it to be almost like a level of a splash page, I may take the exact same thing and I may go and make the top half of the page one large panel. So it's like, that takes up half the page. And then I may go down here at this bottom half and I may divide that into 3 narrow columns. Or I may divide it into, I might do the exact same thing, but have it be 1 page. And then I may divide this into 1 tier and then have the bottom be 3, 4, and 5. So my pages tend to be anywhere from 4 to 6 panels, but it's less about me having a page count that I'm comfortable with and more about what am I trying to convey, what's the beginning, middle, and end of this sequence. As a side note, when I have a scene where there is no action and it's just characters talking, I will intentionally do a 9-panel grid where it's all 9 panels. And the reason I do that is because I want to move through conversation as quickly as possible. The pages tend to become very story dense, so people might actually take more time to read through them. But let's say that I have a particularly wordy sequence, I may have that scene all wrapped up in 1 or 2 pages, as opposed to if I did it with like 4 panels and they were like all large tiers, that conversation might take, I don't know, 4 or 5 pages to complete. And that might make the book seem to really slow down and drag down. Whereas if I just have 2 pages, just a spread, and it's 2 9-panel grid pages, it might be a very dense set of pages to read, but they read that scene, they get all of the information, and they move on to something that's a little bit more action-oriented, or at least there's more movement. Maybe the characters are moving from one place to another. So if I have a lot of talky, I will compact it into a dense section. And the other thing I try to do is I try to see if I can find ways to move some of that dialogue into a scene that has a little bit more action. I don't necessarily want to have people having long Shakespearean soliloquies during a fight sequence. But if I can move some of that conversation into a scene where characters are running after someone or chasing or they're doing something dramatic while they're talking or communicating, that helps the story flow better. It just helps people to be more engaged and not get bored. Let's see. More comments. So Ion Rock says, I loved Man of Steel. DC should have made more, but they're DC. Well, they may still make more. Obviously, it's not like it's the last Superman movie they're ever going to make. They're going to make more of them. So we'll see how that goes. Osir says, okay, I use the extra small to extra large layout for panel, but am not clearly doing the clear beginning, middle, end for each page. It's great when you can do that. If you accomplish that for each page, that's great. Yeah, well, part of the thing, I think one of the reasons why I try to show my process is because my process is one of experimentation. I am very hesitant to tell people this is the way to make comics or this is the way to tell stories. I try a lot of different things as I go, and I'm always tweaking my process because there's some things that, like this method of breaking the page down into beginning, middle, and end, it works very well for me. It doesn't mean it's going to work well for everybody. And I always encourage other creators to experiment with other people's processes and just try stuff. You may try something and, oh, this worked, it's great. I've tried things that other creators have recommended to me and they don't necessarily work. But I'm always open to experimenting with new things. And I try to be open to revisiting ideas I've tried before and did not work. For instance, inking with a brush. I've been trying to ink with a brush since I was 16 years old. And I didn't really get the hang of it until I was in my 30s. And that, mind you, I am not a master inker. I'm still learning and improving my craft as I go. But if I had just simply said, well, I'm not good at inking with a brush, I'm never going to be good with inking with a brush, and just gave up, I wouldn't have what I consider now, I really love. It feels so much more organic than any of the other ways I've tried making comics before. And it's one of the reasons why I enjoyed working traditionally as opposed to digitally. And again, I don't want to get into that. I'm not anti-digital. I think digital is great, and I've said it a million times. I'm in front of a computer all day for work. That's why I don't work digitally. But having learned to ink with a brush has really made the traditional phase way more pleasurable. So I'm trying to think here. He's crushing his head into the ground. I'm going back to now Michael on the ground and what his next step would be. And the challenge here is that I keep saying what the challenges are. It's all challenging. But what I want is for the physical actions to reflect the emotional struggle that's going on here. The emotional struggle of each of these characters feels betrayed in some way. And how can I have this fight symbolize that? How can I physically show what's happening emotionally? That's a big part of storytelling in general. Comics, film, prose writing. In prose writing, you have to worry about, what are the characters doing as much as what they're saying. And I don't simply just want to. Well, sometimes that's what you do when you're working this stuff out. Is you start with what is the crappy version. And I think the other challenge here is that I keep saying, what are the challenges? I want Michael to feel both in jeopardy, but also for people to feel like he is much stronger, like he might be able to win this fight. So having him on the ground, it could just be as simple So let's say that they are in some pit that they've made, some in terms of like the impact that they made when they fell out of the sky. They're in some crater. Just the simple act. How far back can I push this character's arm? The other thing is that when I'm talking and thinking and drawing, I know that I don't really need to make apologies for thumbnails because they're thumbnails, but these are not attractive drawings. This is not the kind of thing like when I'm doing my inking or my layouts where you go, oh, cool, you're using that technique, or nice anatomy. I mean, a lot of these are, like Osier said, working things out with stick figures. But the challenge of working out these stick figures while I'm actually thinking and speaking, in a way, I'm trying to give you guys the inner monologue that's going on in my brain as I'm working this out, and trying to actually say exactly what I'm thinking and getting that down both on paper and verbalizing it is pretty hard. And I think it, in a strange way, it impacts the it makes what would already be ugly thumbnails even worse. But I guess what I'm sketching here is the idea is Michael being on the ground, shoving Uriel off of him. And I feel like as a concept, that is what I want to happen, but it needs to be even more dramatic. The composition isn't dramatic enough. It really needs to feel like an oh snap moment. Maybe it's the opposite, where he pulls Uriel off of him. And you know, I might, believe it or not, when we are done here with this live stream, I'm seeing that there's a lot of grappling going on here. I've never been a UFC aficionado. I'm not really somebody who watches sports in general, but I think I might go and watch a couple of UFC fights just to watch people grapple and see how they physically handle. Like, if I can find a character that's in a situation, you know, shoving somebody's head into the mat, I don't imagine is really something that happens in UFC fights that often, but I don't know because I haven't really watched it. But if I can see a physical sequence that's similar to what I'm trying to convey, that might help me figure out what would be something that would seem plausible in terms of two physical characters fighting with each other, but at the same time to be able to, in comic book format, to exaggerate it to that epic proportions of doing something that becomes surrealistic. Something that feels much more powerful than what we're just used to seeing. Well, there's a hand crushing Michael's head. For starters, I could just have Michael break his arm. Like, that might show, wow, how did he get this strong? That's an idea. And then how would I dramatically show that arm breaking? So let's see here. More comments in the chat. I'm just taking a time to read and sort of reset my brain as I'm doing this. So Osier says, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to get to the process where how Kim Jong-ik draws, where I can get to the point where I lay down the final pen work for comics or animation. This would speed up my work immensely. You can have the chokehold from the perspective of the character receiving the chokehold. That is an idea. Well, I think that I'm probably going to continue, as I'm working this out, that I can show this with maybe a close-up of, the same way that I started with a close-up of Michael's face, to start with a close-up of Uriel's face. I'm running out of real estate on this sheet, so I'm gonna move this sheet over to the side and grab another one. We're not at the tail end yet, but we're at 50 minutes. So I'm gonna go for the full hour as usual. But if you guys have been thinking up questions and you're not sure if you want to throw stuff out there, go ahead and throw them out, and we'll try to get to them in the next 10 minutes as I'm sitting here sketching through this before we wrap up. So there's a possibility. I guess the thing that that's oh well, here's an idea. I guess the real challenge is that that position of Michael's face being ground into the earth is such a powerful one that it's hard for me to see how Michael is going to fight his way out of that position. This isn't referring necessarily to the chokehold question, because the chokehold is more of if I were to start the scene with after they fall to the ground, with Michael being in the dominant position. Or, it could just be brute force. Just the brute force of that hand that's crushing Michael. And this feels sort of like the drama that I'm going for. Because I'm going for anger and betrayal and indignance. Like, what, who do you think you are that you can lay hands on me this way, that you can betray everything that we stand for, that you're siding with a person who's betraying everything that we stand for? And that hand that was crushing his head, that Michael is just pulling it off of him. And I know that, in terms of talk, like, people recommended The Undertaker or Superman for reference in terms of like the size of these guys fighting. That this fight, which I don't know if anyone would say this is a positive comparison, but this is sort of like Superman versus Doomsday in terms of like the Angel of Death being Doomsday and Michael being Superman, except he's not going to lose this fight. Arwith O'Sear says that you could have the head completely underground with his arm his head completely underground with his arm falling with the other character crouched from above from an ant-eye's view. Mm-hmm. I see another Daniel Williams in the chat. Hey, thanks for joining us. Just so you know, we are wrapping up here. Probably only another 5 minutes left, but I'm doing some thumbnails from from the final issue of Morningstar. So, just so everyone knows, pretty much the entire live stream for the next few months is just going to be spoilers for the ending of Morningstar, because I'm working on the final issue. It's all climax from here on out. Oh, flailing, not falling. That was the comment Osir had. And I'm just moving the parts around here, moving this arm. When drawing in ink, sometimes it's just sort of like I just smear around and draw over what I had before, knowing that I'll have to do another drawing to clarify this. And I think, actually, I like the idea of changing this pose so that their two characters' faces are closer to each other. So that forearm would actually be, like the arm is going to be bent at the elbow so that he can be crouching down really on top of Michael. Now, what will be interesting, I think, for you guys will be when I get to the point, because you're seeing me doing all of these thumbnails. You're going to see me in the layout stage doing layout drawings. You're going to see me in the inking stage inking this page. So months from now, you're going to be able to look back at this page that I was struggling to work out what was the action, and you'll come back and say, oh, so that's the angle that he chose. That's the panel he chose. That's how he chose to have this this fight resolved. It'll be interesting to make the comparison. And I could use a bit of a cheat. The other option could be to start. Let's say I've got these two panels side by side. Now, I can already tell you the problem with this is that Uriel tends to be a very quiet person. He doesn't usually say a lot. But I could start with the hand on the head and then cut to the next shot of Uriel looking down at him. And what would make sense in this panel is to have Uriel talking, but I almost feel like that defeats the purpose, because what I was really trying to do in this page was have Michael doing all of the talking, basically saying, how can you do this? How can you betray us? Doing this and that. And then at the end, you find that Uriel believes, because he never specifically says that, or actually, no, it's not until they talk for a little bit, like a little bit. There's 4 panels. There's not a lot of space for them to fight. But there's not a lot of space for them to talk. But maybe this is the point where where Uriel tells or accuses Michael of being the one that murdered Raphael. And that's when Michael realizes this guy is nuts. He doesn't believe me. He doesn't know what's going on. And I may really have to put him down. So, again, kind of like with screenwriters, how they write what's called a vomit draft. What I tend to do is write the crappy on-the-nose version first, both in terms of dialogue and action. I write, this is just the simplest version that would tell what needs to tell. And then I go through and say, all right, how can I make this more unique? How can I make this something that I haven't seen a million times before? How can I make it more character specific to these characters and their relationships with each other? So it's a process of refinement. And I don't really know. I'd be interested, definitely leave comments. Let me know how interesting this was for you to see this phase in terms of I feel like I only moved the ball down the field a little bit in terms of solving the problems of this sequence, because really it just comes down to there's 4 panels that I'm just drawing the connective tissue between characters impacting the ground and characters standing up struggling. And I don't know that I didn't come to any final solutions in this. I didn't resolve it, and I'm still working out the process. I don't really have any final answers. And I'm curious what you guys think in terms of watching someone not seeing the entire arc of solving one particular problem, and not even seeing the beginning of the problem or the end of the problem. You're just seeing me working on the middle of a problem, and I still haven't finished solving it. I'm really curious how interesting that is to you, whether it's only interesting if you get to see the whole process, because I'm sure by the time we get to next week, I will have moved past this scene to another scene. And I don't know whether you guys are like, hey, show us how you solve that, or whether you're fine with just flowing on to whatever the next phase is. So yeah, definitely leave comments. Let me know what you think. And as well, Ion Rock says, don't forget to hit that like button for the channel. Please please share these videos, that share video if you think it's interesting. Please subscribe if you're a new viewer and have not subscribed to my channel. And on that note, again, if you'd like to support these videos, this YouTube channel, the creation of my comics, you can go to patreon.com/GERIMI. If you would like to read some of my comics for free, you can go to comics.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase some of my comic books physically or on Amazon Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. As well, if you read Comixology, there should be a link on my channel description and the channel page. Homepage, there's a link to my Comixology store, or you can still get all the individual issues of Morningstar as well as my other books. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me this weekend. I really appreciate you guys showing up, hanging out with me, watching me in this more chaotic, messy stage of the comics process. It's not always beautiful and pretty, but you got to work through these things to get to the actual finished comic that you're proud of. So that's it for now.